So I'm curious how you've seen the Astros all year in that 6-man rotation, and how you've seen the shift. Have you noticed a notable shift from the regular season into the postseason? Within the Astros team. Let's start with you, Steve.
Okay, well, Luis Garcia is a perfect example in the 18-inning game in Game 3, coming out for 5 innings. So he was a starter. He was in the 6-man rotation for most of the year. And probably, Doug, he probably averaged 93 to 95 miles per hour as a starter. And you go out there and you try to pace yourself. But to see him easily touch 98 over and over and over again without overthrowing, I think that speaks volumes to the way the Astros were able to handle their pitchers throughout the season. And I'm not trying to disparage the Angels at all, but Ohtani it needs a 6-man rotation just because of his workload and what he's used to. But do they have the depth? Do they have enough pitchers to really round out a 6-man rotation? And that's debatable. I'm not saying they don't, I'm not saying they do, but the Astros not only had the depth to be able to do that this season, they also had a guy, Hunter Brown, down in AAA who couldn't get to the big leagues for 3/4 of the season with a 2.5 ERA in the Pacific Coast League because there was no room.
Yeah. And Blummer, I guess, your thoughts on that. I mean, on the offensive side, you see the home run being king, right? So, have you noticed on the offensive side any shift in the Astros kind of going into the postseason?
I think it was kind of fun to watch them throughout the course of the season. As much as they relied on the long ball and having a guy like Yordan in the middle part of their lineup, he had about a month and a half where he had 1 home run in 30 games, it felt like. So they have the ability to play small ball. And I think what's great about it getting through the regular season is, of course, you're going to go ahead and put up your numbers that you normally do. But once you get to the postseason, you kind of have that shift in mentality where you're going to probably have to play some small ball type games. But then you have the emergence of Yordan Alvarez. And what was amazing to me was, in order to get to Yordan Alvarez, you've got to have some key at bats before him. And specifically going back to that Game 1, where you had a David Hensley working a walk as a rookie. You had Jeremy Pena, a rookie, working at bat, getting to 1 strike away from ending that game, shooting a base hit up the middle. But we're all going to remember the home run from Yordan Alvarez. It was amazing to me to watch Yordan Alvarez, with all the expectation on him, provide in those situations where you expected him to provide. And I think that's kind of a luxury that the Astros have, is that they can put so many quality at bats together on you. And then all of a sudden you're going to find a dynamic hitter like Yordan in that specific spot, and he's going to be able to take advantage of it. I think that's where it kind of separates the Astros, is that they can kind of break a pitcher down just long enough to get their big boy at the plate, and a mistake is made and he never misses it, it feels like.
I'm still in awe of Yordan and what he did in that series. The walk-off homer in Game 1, that's an all-timer. That's the first time anyone in postseason history had hit a walk-off anything that turned a multi-run loss into a win on one swing. And then he goes game-turning, go-ahead homer the next game. It just feels to me like America didn't know nearly enough about how great this guy was until now. I'd love to hear what you guys would tell America about Yordan Alvarez. Who wants to start?
Well, I'm going to set it up for Sparky real quick, because a lot of people don't know that when he came over to the States and became an Astro, Sparky adopted him.
I tried to ever since he got
here. You trying to make him a knuckleballer?
Oh, man.
No, far be it for me to turn one of the best hitters in baseball into something so small as a knuckleballer. He's right, though, but we all noticed it right away. And it was not only the physical gifts he had, but it was the mental approach that he had, even when he was 22 years old, as far as his strike zone discipline, his pitch recognition, all of those things, the ability to hit the ball with power the other way, to take a base hit to the left side when he needed to. And that's one of my favorite things about baseball this time of year anyway, is it becomes a very selfless game. And for guys to give him an opportunity to shine in the biggest moments, I love that. Guys are, Blummer just described it perfectly. Guys are finding a way to get on base for Yordan to be able to do his thing. But he's a generational talent, I believe, and he's only going to get better. Only 25 years old.
No, that's what you lose sight, because like Sparky said, when he showed up, he's a 6'5", 250-pound Adonis. And he comes with this, mystique of hitting 400-foot, 50-foot home runs. And yes, he can do that. But when you watch him throughout the course of the season, this guy is a damn good hitter. Sparky talked about the strike zone discipline. The swing decisions he makes are incredible. And yes, next year he's going to benefit from not having somebody play a shallow right field. But I really felt like Yordan was one of those few guys, one of those purebred RBI type guys that actually took advantage of the shift being played against him with runners in scoring position. Because Sparky can attest to this too. As much as we love watching him hit that big home run, he would let that ball travel. He'd let it get deep. He would shoot balls the other way. He'd break a bat, get jammed, just kind of nudge one the other way and drive in that run. And once he got on base, he's an excellent base runner, anticipates where the defense is playing, anticipates scoring on every play, and he plays a great defense. But that's probably been the most fun for me, is the prodigious power, but this guy is a very well-rounded ball player.
Hey, Jayson, I know you like a story. Let me tell you a quick story. When Yuli and Lourdes Gurriel defected from Cuba, they were going to hide him out, as they do while they're trying to work out the visa papers. And when they hid him out, they hid him in Haiti near the water, but in a very secluded hut, a little abode where all they could do was stay there, stay out of sight, make sure that nobody else saw them, and eat and just wait until they were safe enough to be able to go over to the United States and try to sign with the team. And they had a little walking path, and they said this little winding path that went down to the sand was the only thing that they could do, is getting out of the house. If they wanted to walk down toward the sand, they were allowed to do that, but that is it. So they did that for a couple of weeks. And at one point they went down there, and for the very first time after 2 weeks, they saw somebody else. And for the first time they saw somebody, it was another Cuban, and they didn't know him, but they had heard about him. And that was the first day that Yuli Gurriel and Lourdes Gurriel met Yordan Alvarez. Wow. He was being hidden by somebody else at an approximate place near the island, but that was the first day they met.
That's amazing. Yeah, truly. And I guess, you think about these stories and the fact that they're performing as well as they are performing. What has Dusty Baker meant to getting the most out of these players, and also just as people? And I'll start with you, Blummer.
Yeah. For me, obviously, we all know Dusty well, and I would probably say that we all love him too, just because of the personality and the player he was. I remember as a kid growing up in LA, watching him play for the Dodgers, so I had an appreciation for that. And then, of course, playing against all of his great teams throughout the National League Central, I got to know him and play against him and realize what he brought to the ball club. But now watching him and seeing what he's been able to do, and he came over. I mean, his first year was a very tumultuous year, not just in the sense that it was COVID, it was the Manfred letter comes out. But you talk about such a calming influence, and a guy who has literally now seen and done everything in the game, I think did a very good job of diverting a lot of the attention away from the players. And it kind of deflected some of the negativity, because Dusty's such a wonderful, positive human and wants this game to be applauded on a daily basis. But I think it's turned into a situation now. He's kind of been that paternal guy. He's pushing all the right buttons in that series against Seattle. I thought he had some great pinch hit appearances by guys, managed that bullpen beautifully. But I think there's a lot of trust developed between Dusty and these players, knowing that you're going to throw the horses out there, but I'm going to sprinkle in some of these other role player, bench type players. And I think that's part of the appeal of Dusty being around as long as he is he understands how to use that entire bench, which is going to be so vital down the stretch here in this championship series and hopefully in a World Series.
Guys, I know people love to hate the Astros. But when is it time to move on? Dusty wasn't around in 2017. If you make a list of all the hitters who were on this team who played in that 27 World Series, it's Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yuli Gurriel. That's it. And yet people act like 5 years later, they're still banging on trash can lids every game. So, Steve, should the Astros still be that team that America loves to hate?
It might be good for the game, right? I mean, I think the Yankees held that mantle for such a long time that everybody loved to hate them because they spent the most money and people resented the facts that they could buy championships. But I think in sports, you love to hate a team and you love a rivalry and you love to love your team sticking it to somebody that you don't like and things like that. So they've had to deal with it, and I know it's been especially hard on all three of those players that you mentioned, as far as Bregman and Altuve and Yuli Gurriel. It's been tough, man. It's been a tough 3 or 4 years, especially with the pandemic and going to spring training where you see little kids boo you and for whatever reason. I mean, we understand why they're getting booed, and it's not to take away from the fact that they did something wrong. But yeah, you wonder when that statute of limitations becomes void, because they've worn it for a long time. But in the same vein, you go into a playoff situation or any tough series, and the Astros going to New York this year, or any type of situation on the road, they're as battle tested as any team I could ever imagine in baseball.
Yeah, but that might be the question for you guys, because you get to travel around nationally, writing, calling games, doing things like that. How do you feel? What would it take for the Astros to maybe get past that as far as a national fan base?
I think Jose Altuve is going to have to retire,
Right.
something like that. Because
it's amazing.
This isn't rational. This that we can
Yep.
I just stated the rational case for why the statute of limitations should already have run out, but there's nothing about this that has anything to do with rational thought, with logic, with details. It's about what happened then, the emotional reaction that provoked, and those things don't go away just because the facts say it's getting to be time to move on.